Hello everyone, I'm Space Wizard Total War. CA has just released some patch notes for update 1.0.1 for Total War Pharaoh, so let's dive on in and see what exactly is different. Welcome to the very first patch for Total War Pharaoh. We've been so excited to see people connect with the late Bronze Age. Now that the release of the game is behind us, we are focusing our energy on supporting and expanding it. We hope that you're enjoying the game as much as we're enjoying hearing about your experiences amidst the war-ravaged dunes of Egypt. This first patch is full of quality of life improvements that should make your ascendancy to the throne a that bit slicker. Here are a few of the highlights of what's included in patch 1.0.1. The province panel no longer shows effects from regions that do not belong to the player. Added confirmation dialogue when the commands button is pressed. Fixed a bug where Thutmose's reinforcement army doesn't spawn when the target settlement sallies out. Fixed an issue where the general's portrait in the recruitment panel differed from his portrait once recruited. Armor will now degrade at a much slower rate than before. Plus, there is a greater difference on how fast the different qualities of armor degrade. Oh, this is awesome. I was going to even probably have a small video on actually that there is 3 or 4 different qualities of armor, and that before did have a change on how fast the armor is degraded, but it wasn't as much as now, so hopefully it'll actually be a bit more true to life on what the descriptions are. Slingers are no longer going to have access to flaming projectiles. Mott has been restored. We also applied balancing changes to several unit types, notably chariots and archers, following community feedback. Also, slings weren't supposed to have flaming projectiles. It looked really cool, but yeah, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. Capturing all victory points in a settlement at the same time will no longer grant instant victory. It will instead now increase the rate at which the defenders lose morale. Reinforcements or additional armies can now properly be selected on the post-battle screen for performance inspection. The AI will now sally out from its positions in minor settlements, less often when facing a superior enemy. The AI should now handle range units better. There will no longer be cases where it deliberately sends them into melee when shooting is more viable. That's good to hear. Fixed several desync issues in multiplayer. Player feedback is the best weapon which we have to fight bugs and figure out how best to go about improving Total War Pharaoh. You can reach out to us and let us know about your experience with the game in the following ways. Those are right here. If you are over on the TotalWar.com blog area, that is where I'm at, so that's where these links are going to be. And it'll let you go ahead and let them know what your feedback is. Now down to the individual changes that they've made to all of the different aspects of the game, and there are quite a few of these, so grab you some snacks, let's sit down, and we'll read us some through some patch notes. On campaign, they've fixed a bug where some campaign customization settings were not resetting to their default value when selecting default. The different option has been previously selected. The province edict Let Laborers Rest is no longer available for Ramses' faction, as the faction's unique edict for the people provides the same effects but with better bonuses. Fixed a bug where Irsu's faction command Let the World Burn would claim to be lasting for only one more turn on every turn. It now correctly displays the actual remaining turns. Added confirmation dialogue when the commands button is pressed. Added a description of the shadow stance to Karunto's Master Prowler title. Fixed an animation issue in the character details. Fixed the ancillary equip animation not triggering properly. All equipped ancillaries will now be visible in the pre-post battle screens. Fixed unit info staying pinned after returning from the campaign's faction selection screen. Fixed an issue where outpost buildings were shown as available for construction even when their associated settlement is besieged. Also, you're not actually meant to be able to build up outposts while sieges are going on. That does make sense. Fixed the open tactical overview map universal hotkey not working in campaign, and remove the zoom to strategic view campaign hotkey. Fixed the camera scrolling to a shrouded location during sea invasions. Removed an incorrect line of text from fort descriptions. Removed the model of Merneptah from several advisor messages. Removed incorrect port advice from advisor texts. Fixed the description of the player adjust happiness per turn option. Fixed an issue where selecting a different playable faction from the map in the faction selection screen would bring up incorrect information in the faction summary panel. Yeah, that's a pretty important fix. Removed an unnecessary faction pin from Supilulioma's faction selection map. Fixed the text where the achievement all property is theft, playing as Ursu raise 20 outposts. For court, they have fixed a bug that left the court in an invalid state when the court leader died outside of civil war. Abilities granted by the court are now properly shown in the related tooltip. Updated the discount description for the Sacred Land requirement for all of the court units and buildings. Fixed a bug where an incorrect tab was highlighted after a plot was created in court. Diplomacy fixed an issue where factions would incorrectly appear when using the Vassalize Quick Deal filter. Removed the Forced Annexation button from the Diplomacy Deal menu. Changes to resources now show positive values in green and negative values in red in the Diplomacy panel. Great. Fix the Demand Resources button, remaining selected when the player cancels the demand. For the Civil Wars themselves, reduce the Hittite post-Civil War cooldown to match the Egyptian one. The Join Civil War button now no longer incorrectly shows as active when the Pretender's limit has been reached in the Power of the Crown UI. And they fixed an issue where a random faction was displayed as Pharaoh or Great King in the Civil War's screen portrait, and there was no sitting Pharaoh or Great King. For the Power of the Crown, they fixed an issue where 2D character art on the campaign map was not instantly updated upon a player's loss of a crown. On equipping crowns or regalia from the Regalia panel now displays a confirmation prompt, and they fixed a text cutoff in the Power of the Crown menu. Over to changes to the Ancient Legacy for Akhenaten first, deities Ra, Ta, and Thoth are now displayed in the tooltip of Akhenaten Settlement once discovered through occupation. And they improved ranged infantry reload times from Aten's Devoted General Blessing now display correctly. For Hatshepsut, they fixed some trade item descriptions. The number of turns it'll take to reach a destination is now displayed when clicking capital. Fixed the capital pin changing selection state when clicked. Fixed the placeholder images on characters' ancillary items. Fixed players being able to cancel reset a trade without trading anything. Fixed a resource bar that incorrectly displayed when sending an expedition. Updated the notification when Hatshepsut's expedition returns home. Fixed a crash that could happen when selecting the faction capital, which, that's good, that could be quite obnoxious. Never select Hatshepsut before. For Khufu, the upgrade button is no longer present in Khufu's UI when no upgrade is available, which just cuts down on little annoying notifications there. Muatali has a fixed bug in Muatali's Ancient Legacy where, in specific circumstances, incorrectly predicted effects for the next turn were displayed in the UI. Priests have received some additional fortune-telling training, which is great. For Thutmose, they fixed a bug where Thutmose's reinforcement army is not destroyed after defenders sally out successfully, or doesn't spawn when the target settlement sallies out at all. So this was an issue where if you were surrounding a settlement or a siege and they sallied out to fight you, there would be no army that showed up to fight alongside you if you were following the Thutmose Ancient Legacy. And they were also fixing it where if you were to sally out and defeat the army using the Thutmose Legacy, the army would remain so they could come back and besiege you again, and they would still get those reinforcements as if nothing had happened. They made the reinforcements unit card icon consistent with other unit cards, and then they updated the left and right drop-down panel sizes to avoid overlaps. Onward to the battles, and it's got AI to start here, so improved the way that AI uses missile units and prioritizes targets when defending a settlement. Fixed a bug that left some ranged units as idle inside settlements during a siege. The battle AI should now handle ranged units better. There will no longer be cases where it deliberately sends them into melee when shooting is more viable. The battle AI should now better match incoming threats, no longer sending just one unit to deal with multiple enemies. The AI will also now sally out from its positions in minor settlements less often when facing a superior enemy, which we kind of talked about up above. The AI will no longer send its chariots alone into enemy lines when attacking, which we got to see several times there with Amen-Mes, instead using them a bit more tactically. The AI will now be more cautious of burning areas and better avoid them. Units in advanced stance should no longer loiter and reform when there is no need, keeping better ranks. Units will now keep a more cohesive formation with fewer entities lagging behind or straying too far forward when new commands are given. More units will now simultaneously climb ladders and sieges, but when units will no longer appear to be climbing the air. That's awesome. I hadn't had that happen just yet, but I have had reports of invisible ladders. Improve the way units reform when needing to cross narrow passages like gates and gaps in the walls when in the advanced stance. I mean, they have issues doing that in normal stance, so we'll see how that works out. Moving on now to gameplay, slingers will no longer have access to flaming projectiles. Which again is very sad, but does make sense. Capturing all victory points in a settlement at the same time will no longer grant instant victory, but will instead increase the rate at which defenders lose morale. Setting buildings on fire inside a settlement will now update the settlement destruction counter as soon as the fire starts, instead of when the building is completely burned down. Fixed incorrect display of unit ranges for missile units and chariots. I wonder exactly how many of these units didn't have the proper ranges. It would make sense when you see chariots launching arrows when they're way outside of what their supposed range is. We'll just have to see. Increase the negative effects from fighting in a storm or thunderstorm, which sounds terrible. Shuriken Raiders now correctly have the Raider attribute. Kabira Raiders can also now hide in the tall grass terrain. Fixed a bug when using the shortcut to select all mounted units would not select chariots. Which makes no sense at all. Fixed an issue allowing generals with equipped skins to capture settlement control points when mounted on chariots. That's very specific, but good to get fixed. Armor will also now degrade at a much slower rate as units participate in combat, while the speed of armor degradation now varies more between the different qualities. The new durability values are as follows. Excellent quality armor is going from 900 to 1,530. Good quality armor is going from 700 to 1,190. Normal quality armor is going from 500 to 850. Then poor quality armor is unchanged, which we'll have to find the actual values for, but I'm sure around 400. Bring the game more in line with our vision of the strengths and weaknesses of the different unit types, we are introducing several balance changes. Increasing the cost of all two-handed club and two-handed axe units in the custom and multiplayer battles by 50. Increasing the bow reload speed by roughly 1 second. Missile infantry with bows will now shoot faster. That's quite a bit faster. We'll lump all the heavy chariot ones together so they increase the heavy chariot speed from 80 to 92, which is terrifying. They were already, I thought, a little bit too fast. I thought they could have been reduced. We'll see how they go for the rest of the chariots, though. The heavy chariot charge speed has also been increased from 110 to 122, which is equally terrifying. Their charge bonus has been increased by 10, and then their health increased by roughly 15%, so probably rounded up. To the medium chariot changes, the medium chariot speed has been changed from 95 to 103. Oh, I see, so they are all getting faster. Medium chariot charge speed is going from 120 to 128. Charge bonus is being increased by 5, health by 10%. Then to the light chariots, they're going from 115 speed to 120, so they're getting very quick. And then the charge speed is going up by 5 from 140 to 145. No health changes and no charge bonus changes on them. They're also going to be decreasing the base damage of axe and two-handed axe infantry units by roughly 10%, while also making them more expensive, huh? They're going to be decreasing the armor-piercing damage of club, two-handed club, and Kapesh infantry by roughly 10%, and then decrease the precursor javelin damage of melee units by roughly 10%. So there's a lot less damage going out, and units are becoming a little bit more tanky, so battles are going to last quite a bit longer unless you're using those chariots, which has got a bunch more charge bonus. For overall units, they fixed an issue where the general's portrait in the recruitment panel differs from his portrait once recruited. That's the one that was talked about up above. Fixed a bug in which the weapons of the general's bodyguard in the general's tab did not match the weapons used in battle. That's a pretty important one. Fixed the display of a unit flavor text when 2 unit paddles are simultaneously displayed. Fixed a bug where the withdraw unit order was missing a hotkey. Fixed an issue where cycling generals would display placeholder devoted god information. Well, that would be quite obnoxious. For UI changes, starting with battle, they've changed the icon border of armored Anatolian swordsmen to correctly represent tier. The reinforcement or additional armies can now be properly selected on the post-battle screen for performance inspection. The people's units should now have the correct strengths and weaknesses information. Added a new unit banner icon for units with the weapon switching ability to indicate when they are using their alternative weapons, which will be great for actually keeping an eye on who's using what in the battles. Units with the weapon switching ability should no longer display the shield icon when using their two-handed weapon, which is just what they changed there. Added a new banner icon for units that are using alternate attack modes. Awesome. Building and construction. Fixed the settlement UI displaying some improper building names and descriptions after occupation. Show a specific warning when worshipping Aten prevents the building of a grand temple. buildings are no longer shown as available for construction when the current tier is damaged. Fixed duplicate info on damaged buildings, and they fixed the repair building button not highlighting on hover and when pressed. For events, they corrected a text error in the Deadly Dispute Dilemma, and the United Against Us event now appears at an appropriate time. For tooltips and buttons, they fixed information overlays for pre-battle buttons. The local deities UI panel now closes after zooming to a chosen settlement. Fixed an interaction with the local deities and the Akhenaten buttons when in the faction widget. Corrected some tooltips and info texts and labels. And then they fixed some text color, font, icon size, and text overlap and text errors. Just a whole bunch of nice UI quality stuff fixed up there. And then over to the other. Clicking the background frame of the faction summary panel will no longer close it. That would have been quite obnoxious. I didn't try this, but the local deities menu will now properly display the info overlays for both the worshipped and all gods tabs. That's great. Set the minimum and maximums UI scale for various resolutions to ensure UI remains legible. Fixed a display issue with the resolutions drop-down menu in the graphics settings. The correct number of remaining turns for Pillars of Civilization effects is now shown. Corrected an error with the play pause button in the credit section. Changing a hotkey in the options no longer collapses the submenu. Fixed a potential crash when changing camera between debug and RTS settings. Yeah, that would be quite obnoxious. Again, this is a bug I didn't have myself, but would not be a good time, which would try to switch up your camera settings. Optimized asset dimensions and animation properties to improve performance. Flags and feathers should now behave more naturally under strong wind, which is great because they're looking a little bit stiff. The province panel no longer shows effects from regions that do not belong to the player. Removed some placeholder images and added a yellow sandstone texture as backgrounds for unit cards in the recruitment panel. Cozy. Onward to the tutorials. They added an ambition to turn 4 of the tutorial for the capture Sukkot objective. Fixed an issue in which Royal Decree's advice rendered behind the technology panel. Fixed an issue in which the local deity's advice would trigger before unlocking the mechanic. The Azati workforce has been removed, lowering Sukkot's recruitment slots. As a result, Sukkot has no armies to immediately retake their lost settlement after a player victory. If you wipe out Sukkot, the army that spawns is now once again at war with the player. First Sukkoti army is now fully destroyed if you killed the general, but left a few units alive. Sukkoti forces will no longer stack against you after marching to the next Seaborn army near Sukkot. Azati is no longer captured simply by the encirclement of the settlement at turn 7. Remove the option for the player to end the turn before reaching the end of onboarding for turn 4. Added additional movement points for the newly recruited general on turn 7, so that Neb Gehez will be reached even if the player plays around with the animation speed and tries moving backwards. Interesting. Remove the Read More button on the Hittite screen to improve the focus on the Egyptian path. Tutorial saves can now be loaded without automatically skipping some of the prompt's interventions. Fixed clipping of Merneptah's robe. Fixed various highlighted tutorial elements. Fixed mixing, overlapping, or cutoff tutorial voiceovers. Fixed a variety of soft locks that could occur during the tutorial. For the Civil War, the Vizier position is now free the first time you open the court in the tutorial, as per the narrative. Removed a campaign intervention telling you about an already joined Civil War. Removed some player legitimacy early on and re-added it at the correct time, preventing the player starting an early Civil War too early. Seti and Tolzeret cannot declare war on Ramesses in the tutorial before a Civil War has started. Seti and Tolzeret are very aggressive in every campaign you play as Egypt, as long as you're not one of the two. The Pillars of Civilization meter now shows once the Civil War has ended. Advice for Pillars of Civilization now appears during the appropriate turn. Remove some incorrect advice related to legitimacy. The regions Sai and Pyoenimon, visible behind Inu, now remain visible after the cutscene. Added a start camera position for the Gifting of Settlements cutscene. Added improved character development instructions to the tutorial campaign. Removed faction widget buttons for mechanics not yet introduced in the tutorial. Removed pointers for the minimal advice setting. Fixed an issue where the scripted objectives panel in the tutorial could be wrongly positioned. For tutorial battles, the first battle victory tutorial now triggers at the appropriate time. Added invading armies and additional tutorials for stances within the tutorial campaign. Added additional steps and advice to stance unlocks. And updated the siege defense tutorial text. Onward to multiplayer for those who like to punch their friends. General, they fixed a bug where a number of friends was incorrectly displayed. The campaign win movie will now be played for the winner in head-to-head multiplayer campaigns. The saving pop-up no longer overlaps the turn notification in a multiplayer campaign. Fixed several desync issues. For the battles themselves, multiplayer battles should now properly update the number of players and spectators when new people join. Fixed a possible desync at the start of multiplayer siege battles. Fixed a crash in multiplayer when clicking the End Battle button when routing AI units are mixed with player units. Fixed an issue in multiplayer ambush battles that caused the defender to partially see the radar map in realism mode. For Encyclopedia, they fixed the Encyclopedia link for character experience, skill points, and the Shrine of Malak. They removed an unnecessary Encyclopedia link from Prayers to Malak. Added missing flavor text for Translators' Quarters. And fixed an issue where a link to the encyclopedia was attached to an icon instead of the text. Last but not least technical, they deployed a graphical fix for firing arcs on NVIDIA GPUs when MSAA is enabled. Fixed certain areas on the Pi Ramesses battle map where units could pass through cliffs, which that sounds great. Fixed several misplaced capture locations on walls and siege maps. Unclimbable inner walls in the Hattusa battle map will now properly display as such. Fixed multiple clipping issues with the Royal Hishart Chargers. Fixed an incorrect voiceover audio that played on unfortified settlement battles. Several potential crashes, which is very vague. Corrected an issue where trying to move a non-allied Sea Peoples unit on the campaign map didn't play any voiceover. And trained City to hold his shield properly when using a Kapesh. We're not sure who oversaw his martial education. And that's that for this first batch of patch notes. Let me know what you all think in the comments below, but I have been Space Wizard Total War. Remember to leave a like for the light god and a sub for the sub thone. I'll see you on the next one.